How are you feeling about this week's game? Run.
Um, yeah, look, on a personal note, I love coming here and playing at the stadium. I get a buzz. I think it's probably the best football stadium setup. I don't know if you've been here before, but when it's full, the place is buzzing. It's great pitch as well. So I think the boys always enjoy this trip. And Adelaide are always a very hard opponent. I know they've had a couple of you know inconsistent results are late, but they're still going to be very hard to play.
I'm speaking of the boys. Any injury or fitness concerns? How's the squad looking this week?
No, everyone's okay. The only one that's come out the wrong way is Paulo after his injury in the game. We decided not to risk him for this week, so just give him a week of recuperation and then back in the squad for next week.
Yeah. Um, did you see the news last night out of APL sort of looking to change the salary cap
Sure.
in future years? And did you see that and do you have any sort of reaction to what that might mean for this competition and for this club?
I don't think it impacts us, on our side in terms of the budget and so on. But I think that the sustainability of the game in the long term is what's at risk. And I think that every club needs to be sustainable. And I think this model of trying to get younger players through the system and selling them is one avenue, and I think also cost reduction is also I think healthy, especially if every stadium was full and merchandise was flying and TV rights were at a maximum, then there's a different argument, but I think they're taking steps for the long haul.
Just a few sort of niche ones. While we're here on Zoom. Just in terms of some of these young guys, and they've like Corwin Piper, Matt Sheridan, Lucas. They've played a lot of different positions this year. Obviously, that's something you've talked about in terms of your overall sort of philosophy at the back of the start of the season. But how do you think those guys are going in terms of being asked to do these different roles and how that sort of um, you know how their development is going, not
Mm.
having just one position to sort of focus on?
Yeah, I think at the beginning of the year, the idea was more for the senior and foreign players to rotate between positions. It wasn't necessarily the young guys that I had set in mind to rotate. That's been more circumstances with injuries. Um, but I think, the long-term play from here is that their development will be significantly, accelerated because of the whole process. I think for their own personal development, each individual player, it'd be nice that, moving on from next season, that they start pinning down to one position, and then they can build a bit of cohesion, also cohesion with their teammates and so on. So that's the plan. But I think they're all doing well. I mean, I'm not really sure what people expect from young guys. I mean, 16, 17, even Shez, like, 19, 20-year-olds, the one good thing about young players is, the one thing that's consistent is their inconsistency. So I always take that approach with their performances. And I think, you know, given all the circumstances this year and all the ups and downs and the struggles and the challenges, I think those boys have come away holding their head very high.
Can I just ask about Matt? Because obviously, I think when he came into the first team, he'd been playing right back for the reserves. He sort of first came into the team around that position, but he had been sort of a six, a central midfielder before that when he was even sort of younger.
Mhm.
Is that sort of like, can you say like the six where you think sort of he has a future more so than fullback? What can you say about Matt and how he's sort of gone in those roles?
Yeah, I think anywhere in the spine, defensively or in the midfield, I think that's where he'll find himself. He can do a job at right back or in the wide areas. I mean, I remember playing him against Mariners early part of the season, did a great job as a winger, played at right fullback as well, a couple of times when Payne was out. So the great thing about Shez is that he's got great versatility, but because he's got a good football brain, can cover the ground, that puts him in really good stead, just to play. And I think that should be his priority in the first couple of years of his development, and then eventually he'll find his niche. I mean, if you look at players when they come into the club, I think Alex Riffer was recruited as a nine when he first started. He's ended up being, a very good defensive midfielder now. So, football development and positional play isn't linear. Sometimes, could be a player's out, you go to right back, like Payne. Payne was recruited as a six when he came in, and he ended up at right back and being one of the best right backs in the league. So, yeah, these things will eventually sort themselves out. But for me, these young players need to play as much as they can to get that experience. That's what's, I think, the most important thing.
Can I just ask about Corbin? Because I think in recent weeks, he's really sort of caught the eye, really impressed a lot of people. It's some
Mhm.
of, I guess, some of those intangibles, sort of a bit of heart, perhaps a bit of passion. But
Mm.
he's played all over the park. He's obviously played a lot in sort of attacking roles at lower levels.
Mhm.
Um, having sort of got to the end of his first season in A-League, what do you see there in terms of him as a player who can, be an A-League player going
Mm.
forward?
Well, I think the great thing about him is that when we brought him in, it was a little bit of a project in terms because he had those defensive abilities that we thought that we could cater into, or craft into a defender. But again, the all these challenges we had this season and playing him in different positions, whatever position we played him in, he's done a great job. I always say a little bit rough around the edges, but that's also someone that's come from, playing in second div Ireland and playing in the Central League, and then he's expected to make a jump up straight to A-League. It doesn't work. It's not seamless. It takes a bit of time transition, but because he gives 100% every game, I can't fault his intention, and I think that energy kind of rubs off on the rest of the players. You can feel the crowd gets a buzz every time he gets the ball. The fact that, if you look at last week's goal, he made an error in the first part of that build-up phase, recovered, and then he ran 80 meters to support and, assisted from the cutback. So, um, again, I always say if I had 11 players like that with that sort of mindset, I think it'd be very hard to lose games. So, I think the long-term planning with him is that he'll probably settle into one of those, lower defensive positions, potentially a centre back that can step out, or even could cover as a wing back or a right back.
Oh, cool. And just lastly, have you ever been to Darwin before?
No, don't plan to.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have.
What do you think?
Too hot.
Yeah, no, fair enough.
That's all from me, Chief, on the game. Adelaide
Mhm.
obviously haven't been going too well of late, but are they still a tough threat, especially at Cooper's?
Yeah, they have a lot of good attacking options. They're a dangerous team, a good transitional team. I think their strength is also their biggest weakness because when they throw numbers forward, they can be transition as well. We saw Perth, cause a lot of problems from last week. Um, but again, at home, very hard to play. We've I've been there many times. I think I've only maybe come out once, maybe twice with the result. So we go into it, making sure that we're focused, and our goal is to win the last three games. We think it's very achievable, and we also want to put a good football show, build a little bit more consistency than what we did last week, and have a better defensive display as well.
Yeah. Winning those three games, do you think that will avoid the trip to Darwin?
Potentially, I think that's out of our hands at the moment. Again, we take game by game. We try to win every game, try to maximize everything. But winning the last three games also is a matter of I think more pride for the boys as well as a group, and want to finish the season on a high. And again, taking three games in a row to if we do go to Darwin, gives us good momentum as well.
You touched on Cooper's earlier, but I think the Phoenix have only won four times there in the club's history.
Yeah.
What is it so difficult about playing Adelaide at Cooper's?
I think the crowd. We've always played with good numbers, always either on a Friday night, and I think obviously it's Easter Friday, so there's going to be a large crowd. So they get a buzz from the crowd, and they can be quite vocal. I think, and it's also the travel. We're on two flights yesterday. It takes a bit of time to recover, so Sometimes it's hard to get into the game. I think the couple of games that we've won, or that I remember, we won late. You know, we were 1-0 down. Mile Jusnic scored I think it was like 6 years ago, scored early, and we scored late, 2 goals. And it takes a bit of time for us to, to acclimatise. Yes, it's a tough trip.